representing Mr. Rowell. Rowell is actually working with the Farm Debt Crisis Working Group, and Rowell has 10 minutes also to just bring them up to date on that. And we'll have our panel discussion, and after that then the presentations for the proposed restructure of Cattle Council in the Lake will take place. But here right now is Mr. Rowell. Thank you, Rowell.
Thanks, Ashley. Can we just flip on to the first graph? Can you flip on the first graph? That's the second page.
Right, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked here today to just have a short conversation about this question of debt that's creating a problem for a lot of people in rural Australia. And I'll really that financing. And but I was thinking that you'd all be sitting here thinking about that bloody spaghetti that Brad put up a little while ago, the chart, you couldn't work out who was where. It's just that Don Anderson did put in place, and I really think that that's the main thing that you've got to sort out today. By the time you leave here, you should have a simple, fairly straight line about how your representatives represent you and where your money goes. And my job here today is not to talk about that. It is to talk about debt. And so, as is unusual for me, I've written a small speech here. I normally go ad lib. I must thank the Australian Beef Association for inviting me here to speak for a few moments on the formation of the Rural Finance Roundtable Working Group. I want to make a point. I want to talk about a disconnect, an entrenched misunderstanding which seems to be deep and deepening between those primary producers on the ground and the government, and between them and their agri-political representatives who you would think would represent their interests. The best way that I can do this is to illustrate my story, which culminates in the formation of and the activities of the Rural Finance Roundtable Working Group. In early 2011, after the failing rains of 2010, my family grain growing business, so mostly a grain grower, we grow some acres of grain, also run up to about 1,000 cattle at different times, was feeling winded. We worked hard to grow a huge crop and used the best advice and managed a huge result, which was mostly swept away in the unusual ongoing flood rain. So in 2011 was a bit of a bounce back, which is often how grain producers get out of trouble with a good year. As it turned out, the yield was reasonable, our yield was average, and the price collapsed. And when we reflected on the outcome, we'd average $160 a tonne for our wheat. Now, to put that in perspective, I left ag college in 1974 and grew my first wheat crop that year and received $175 a tonne. There's no adjustments for inflation, so we're talking about nominal prices. Later that year, and here is some disconnect, I read an article in the Queensland Country Life, it wouldn't be a person here that doesn't read the QCL. It was headlined, "You've never had it so good." In the very same paper, in the farms for sale section, were pages and pages of farms for sale, but more interestingly, a number were at the instruction of liquidators. Now, liquidators don't get involved unless there's some really bad trouble around. So as is my style, I wrote a letter to the editor and stated that you cannot have it both ways. Bad enough that liquidators are finding work, or as good as it gets. My next call was to an old friend, a well-known economist who came home to a family farm later in his life after shearing for some years, and during that time educating himself with 2 economics degrees, a degree from UQ and a further degree from UNE, then pursuing a professional life in urban Australia in the upper echelons of the insurance industry. His 2 degrees give him great depth and understanding of ideas, and I believe his work is unparalleled. So I called Ben Rees and said, "What on earth is going on? We seem to be in real trouble on a number of fronts, and I'm really worried for the future of the bush. Can you take a look and let me know?" Well, Ben is prone to getting to the heart of issues, and he wrote a draft paper, which is his style, of some 30 pages, chock-a-block with graphs and charts. Can we just flip through to the last chart and come back from it?
Sorry.
There's some charts that I want to show you. I believe that graphs are a picture. Which you left with.
Hang on, is that it?
While we just find that, I'll just find the copy. Yeah. So some of these graphs you've got to look at a little bit to catch them properly. The red line is farm costs poking along there. Gross value of farm production is the upper line. This is the very last one, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, is that what
Yeah, no, I want the one before. Go back. This is the one I'm after. gross value of farm production moves in sympathy with the CPI. The CPI, everybody, is the green one. Now, most everybody in our community derives their income with some relationship to the CPI. If I'm arguing for an income level, I want to maintain real values, so I need to be close to the CPI. The gross value of production, which is everything that we produce in every agricultural industry, is this line that pops along and keeps roughly together with the CPI. But the one which gives you breakfast tomorrow morning and the money to send your kids to school is this red one down the bottom here. And this is a disconnect. This gap that's getting wider and wider here between us and the rest of the community is why you're all worried about what's going to happen to you. And that's what we're going to have to deal with in the end. It's chronic low profitability, and we've become disconnected from the wider community. If you get into the economics world, some will tell you that that's a clear demonstration of a transfer of resources from producers to the wider economy. And you want to worry about that, because if we keep going like we are, there's going to be less and less of us around about the place. Can you flip back to the next screen, please? This one here is important because it shows a really important crossover here, where prices received and prices paid. Actually, the trend line, those long lines, cross over in that 99-2001 period, roughly there. And it doesn't look like they're going to come back together. So you want to think it's tough now, it's going to continue to get tougher and tougher as we go on. And back to the next one. Prices paid, prices received. What are we doing here?
Sorry.
Prices paid.
Which one?
Backwards, we want to go.
That one?
Yeah, one after that one. Okay. Oh no, you go back to that one. We'll just leave that one as the backdrop. And this one, you know, really what you can see here happening is that in this period, somewhere around about here, the thing got away from us. And that's why there's trouble all over the place. And essentially that's the leading to the GFC and what have you. So that's what the debt thing looks like. It's actually, they tell me it's 68 billion at last count and still rising. So it's something that looks pretty damn ugly if you want to have a look at it. Anyway, so in the meantime, once we've got these charts, I had a bit of a yarn to Bob Catter and said, Bob, this is looking a bit ugly and I think we're going to have to do something about it. We need to have a yarn with the Treasurer, because he's going to have to get involved here, because if you don't do something about this, a lot of people are going to be in trouble. And Catter said to me, well, that's not so easy, and but I'll have to go anyway. Some months went by, a few months, several months actually, might have been 4, 5, 6, and finally a meeting popped out. It was organised essentially by Wayne Swan, and Swanee and Ludwig one way or another got together with Catter and agreed that they'd have a meeting. So a meeting was held ultimately in October of 2012. At the meeting, and it is, I'm sure it's the couple of guys, Swanee and Ludwig, who would have been able to make sure these people attended. Most of the banks from around Australia, Treasury, ABARE, a number of farm organisations, and grassroots farmers. We insisted we have some blokes straight off the ground from different places around Australia, from most of the states in our nation. The meeting was told that the northern beef herd operators were in dire trouble, that some 30% were in default as we met. The West Australian grain growers who attended, represented by both small and very large operators, told us that in some districts in WA every property was for sale, that a number of foreclosures had occurred, and many more were in the wind. And in many other places it was evident that trouble was brewing. The dairy industry is in most states in a state of chaotic decline. In Victoria, some 10,000 milking cows and 35 farms are subject to foreclosure. Ben's graphs indicate an anomalous future. After the round table, we held a public meeting at the Queensland University of Technology, and in essence we came up with we formed a working group and came up with a 3-stage path forward. Firstly, to seek emergency assistance to assist feeding stock and planting crops where funding was not in place. Secondly, the research path to natural crises, looking for a precedent and methodology to provide a reconstruction body capable of meeting the funding needs of primary producers. In fact, tailoring a funding model using a methodology which could easily be accommodated by government of whatever persuasion, providing the proposition legs providing the proposition legs in the form of legislative construction. And thirdly, to turn our attention to what is the underlying problem of chronic low profitability in industries of the bush and in particular agriculture. 420, of course, million, which was announced by Ludwig and Swanee, and seems to have got mixed up in this disconnect somehow, was intended to be delivered quickly, and it has been a bit slower than some of us would have thought. In fact, to be practical, maybe we're a bit naive. We thought the toughest thing would have been to get a Labor government to actually give Cocky something, and when they did, we thought it would just easily find its way through the state governments to the people that needed it, but it got caught in the process somehow. We don't really know how. 2 minutes. I'm going to be a bit late, actually, to get used to it. Together with the assistance from Dr. Mark McGovern from the Kia team, a member of our working group provided Bob Catter with a bill, which he introduced into the House of Representatives to provide a tailored funding initiative with minimal budget effect to reconstruct rehabilitating debt in rural Australia. The bill, the Reserve Bank Amendment, Australian Reconstruction and Development Board, brings the Australian banking arrangements into line with much of the rest of the world. The ARDB has the capacity to provide effective solutions to the problems besetting the nation. Used to its fullest degree, it is well able to provide effective competitive funding payments to the industries and infrastructures in line with industry's ability to develop and progress. This bill now lies in the Parliament, and unless Parliament is reconvened, will lapse and need to be reintroduced, or one party or the other could recognise its simplicity and potential, as did Andrew Rowell, Barney or Fiona Nash or Nick Telephone, and do away with the partisan politics and carry it and enact it so as to bring into the existence of the Australian Reconstruction and Development Board. In this world where food production is said to be paramount to provide food security for the world, the fact that farmers are going broke simply means that something is wrong with industry policy. What is needed is a government which understands the hardships faced by producers and is prepared to assist in reorganising the situation so that producers make a reasonable profit. The passing of all risk of production with the new drought plan, both seasonal and price through the loss of our orderly marketing arrangements, is having an uncomfortable effect on our industries. While profits are under such unrelenting pressure, we leave little choice for providers of funds to our industries but to recognise the full extent of the risk with appropriately priced margins. The flow on from this will be dramatic if some intervention is not forthcoming. Ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is that we need a profit, no matter how meagre, to make logic out of the act of production. Otherwise, there is no choice but for contraction. Contraction is entirely counter to the visions of both government and the opposition, as they both look north to save our nation's farmers. While we need to do better than looking northward, stabilisation is needed while we consider the alternative changes needed to bring profit once again to our industries and our communities. In closing, I hope that you can see this disconnect. I'm talking about the failure of representation to convey how it is on the ground to those who can help, rather than the folly of maintaining the positive image, even if the thing is coming to pieces under you. So get involved in the organisation that you think that should represent you, whether it's this one or another one, it doesn't matter. If you do not like what it's doing, change the directors, become one of them if you need to. We need to retake our future and do away with this disconnect. Once again, thank you to the ABA for this meeting.